I'd lived in the UK my whole life, and then just under 2 years ago, we decided to move to Australia. I never wanted to move to Australia, to be honest. I was quite a home person. I didn't really have any interest in it. I honestly thought that every time I'd open a cupboard door, there'd be a snake jumping out at me, or, you know, so friendly. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, like with anywhere, there's obviously exceptions. You obviously get, miserable people. That, there's nothing that they haven't got here, spiders that can kill you, but it's not as bad. I have seen them, please, I've got to say that, to look at, Australia is such a beautiful country. It's so clean. People are really friendly. I definitely was not, I come from the UK, which I'm sure there are friendly people, but a lot of the people are, they absolutely don't want to have anything to do with you just as much as you don't want to have anything to do with them. But then when you see one in front of you and it just sort of slithers in front of you, it kind of it's a bit of an anticlimax. Actually, wasn't that scary.
Hello, Charlotte.
Hi.
Nice that you took the time. Thank you for that. Welcome at our discussion where we try to find some nice stories between cultures. Let's say it like this. Charlotte, can you tell us something about you? Where you're originally from and where you are living at the moment?
Sure. So myself and my family are from the UK. I'm from Kent, right down the bottom. My partner's from London. And I've lived in the UK my whole life. And then just under 2 years ago, we decided to move to Australia. So we're currently in Queensland in Australia.
That I would call it a big move.
Very big, yeah, very big.
What did spark your interest to move to Australia?
I never wanted to move to Australia, to be honest. I was quite a home person. I didn't really have any interest in it. My partner, he travelled Australia when he was younger for a year. And he'd always wanted to come back, and he'd always said that he would love to live here. And I was just like, no, why would I want to live in Australia? It's full of snakes and spiders that I'd never go. And then we've got 2 children, and our daughter was a year old, and we just nearly a year old. And I decided, oh, do you know what? Actually, I think he was getting a bit fed up with work, and everything was, very sort of mundane, and was stuck in a bit of a rut. And we just thought, we just wanted to try something new. And he mentioned it again, and I said, yeah, we'll look into it. And then, I don't know. I don't really know what the turning point was, but my mind just changed. And I thought, if we're going to do it, let's do it now while the kids are young, while we've got the chance. And and we just went for it, really. So.
You need a lot of courage, I have to say.
Yeah.
I mean, for this move, you need a lot of courage. It's always good when when one of the partners was already there and he knows how the things are running, but still you need a lot of courage to do this huge step.
Yeah.
Considering the fact that you already have kids, what was the grandparents' reaction when you decided you want to leave?
So I have my mum, and I'm very close to my mum, and she's very close to the children. So she was upset, that she wasn't going to see them, but I couldn't have asked for a more supportive mother. She was incredible. She supported us every step of the way. And Brett's parents were the same. They were upset themselves and that they weren't going to see us, but they knew why we were doing it. And I feel very lucky because I know a lot of people whose parents react really badly when they say that they're going to move abroad, and that makes it really hard. So I feel very lucky that, although our families were upset that we were going, I do feel very lucky that they were understanding and they supported us the whole way, which I'm really grateful for. So
that's really nice. So of course the fact that they were upset, it's absolutely understandable because they have grandkids, and I don't think that you did expect something else. But the fact that they were supportive with the move, that's an amazing one, I have to say.
It was.
How was the decision process? Because of course you knew Australia, it's not a small country. How was the decision process? How have you decided on the place? You just pointed on the map?
No, we'd have been there for a long time trying to do that. So basically, my partner, he obtained a sponsorship visa. So he got his job while we was in the UK, and they sponsored us to come and move out here. Um, and so we went to where his work would be. I know when we first came here, we started in Queensland in a little town, because there was some friends of Brett's parents who had a rental in that area. So
Mm-hmm.
we decided to stay there because it would really help us sort of get started.
Mm-hmm.
And then it meant we weren't having to, try and find secure a rental from the UK, which is not easy. So we were really lucky with that we had the help from them to be able to get a rental. And Brett was actually working in a different state in Australia. So we were going to do FIFO, which is fly in, fly out. So he was working away for 3 weeks and then just coming, and then he'd be home for 1 week. And we did that. We only did that for about 3 months because it just was really, really hard. First coming here and having no family and not knowing anyone, and Brett being away for such long periods of time. It was just too hard on all of us. It was too much for the children. It was too much for me. So we then moved from there, and then we moved down to just outside of Canberra in New South Wales to where he was working, and we lived there so that he'd be at home. Um, but now his job's moved again, so we've just moved back up to Queensland now. This is our third house in less than 2 years, so we've moved a bit. But the contract he's got now is for quite a few years, so we're hoping that we'll stay here. And then if and when we move again, that'll be when we sort of buy our forever home and settle. So yeah, it's not been easy. We could have just sort of gone anywhere if we'd have wanted to do the living separately and him flying in and out from work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't know anyone and you're in a new country, having that time away is too much. So we decided that for the first few years we'd move with his work. Um, yeah, so that's what we've done.
I think it's hard because let's say when the reason why you moved there is not there, because the actual reason was to move there was to be with the family together, and
Exactly.
when it's not there, then it's, I think it gets even difficult that there is anyhow the move, because the move is difficult anyhow, because you are leaving family, you are leaving friends behind, and if also your partner is not there, then I think it's hard.
It was, yeah, very hard.
Did you didn't know anyone in the area?
No, so when we first moved, we did the family friends of Brett's parents. We knew them, and we saw them sort of regularly and things like that, and they were a great help to us.
Mm-hmm.
They were a great help in helping us, supporting us when we first moved over and things like that. But obviously now then we moved hours and hours away, so then it was back to completely not knowing anyone, and sort of starting all over again just after a few months. So, but yeah, now we've only been in this where we're living now. We've only been here about 3 months, but we're starting to I've made quite a few friends through like play groups and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
Freddie's doing well at school, so it's going well. So I'm hopeful for here.
I always like to quote. I have myself a boy, which is he's 6 years old, and I always like to make the joke that kids are connecting people.
They
Uh,
do. They
it's like the
do.
Nokia commercial in the back.
They're just such a great like conversation starter, aren't they? Because you could, if you were just standing next to someone normally, you probably wouldn't say anything. But when they've got children, you're like, "Oh, she's so cute," and
And
then you
then
can start
and then
talking.
you have it. Yeah. Correct.
So yeah, it definitely helps.
How was the? You said that you moved in a different place, and then you switched places. But how was generally the arrival experience? What was a bit the expectation management? Did you had big expectations, you had low expectations? How are the first impressions when you landed?
It was quite overwhelming for me. I think me and Brett had quite different experiences because he'd been here. He kind of knew what to expect and things. Although it's obviously different than when you come back 10 years later with a family. Obviously, your experience is different. But I was really like pleased. I've got to say that like to look at Australia is such a beautiful country. It's so clean. People are really friendly. Like I definitely was not. I come from the UK, which I'm sure there are friendly people, but a lot of the people are, a bit glum. So everyone here was like, really friendly. And I think what shocked me most is just how big it is. Like you kind of know that Australia's a big country, but I think until come here for yourself, you just can't like fathom how big it really is. Like it's just huge. Like just to drive from one town to the other, you're looking at like a 40-minute drive just from one town to another. It's but I was really pleasantly surprised. I think it kind of was what I was expecting it to be, which was nice. So it was a nice feeling for it to be as lovely as I thought it would be. So
That's always good,
yeah,
because usually when you go without expectations, you are never surprised because it's always a positive surprise, right? So
yeah,
you're never disappointed. But when you go with expectations, when you go okay, thinking the country looks good, and I do think I will enjoy the place, and usually do that's even a, let's say, a better feeling than you can have from the beginning.
yeah, definitely.
Is it
Yeah.
is it true what they say about the Aussies, that they are extremely friendly no matter what?
So friendly, yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. Like with anywhere, there's obviously exceptions. You obviously get,
Of
miserable
course.
people, but in general, they're very friendly and very helpful. Like, because I'd heard that a lot of Australians, they moan about the Brits coming over and stuff, which I guess older generations you do still get that. But in general, I found the Australians to be extremely friendly and extremely helpful. Yeah, really, really pleasant.
I'm just asking because every story that I hear about the Aussies is how cool they are, how relaxed they are, how they
Yes.
don't have any kind of, let's say, any kind of useless stress that they are applying on themselves. And this is when I see that actually that's the real life. So it's not only a story.
No, they're very laid back. Like nothing is like they have a saying over here, like no worries, and it's literally the most fitting thing to them because they just don't stress about anything. Like you could say to them, like, "Oh my God, my house has just collapsed," and they'd be like, "Oh, it'll be all right." Like they're just so chilled.
It's always based on the principle, this too shall pass. It's okay. I mean, um, have you faced I know maybe it sounds funny, but have you faced some language barriers when you arrived there?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially like older males. If they talk a bit too fast, I just can't understand what they're saying. Like, and I'm like, ah. And then there's a lot of sort of slang words and stuff like that, which they use. Like the Australians like to shorten any word you can shorten, they will shorten it. Even if it's not really a word that does shorten, they'll find a way to do it. Like so they have a lot of different slang words and stuff, and they just use them, so frequently in their normal sort of sentences. And that I found a barrier because I think that I don't know what that is. That I understood what he was saying until he said that word, and now I don't know what he's talking about. So, yeah, definitely. But I've got to learn a lot more of them. So I'm getting there now. I do understand what they mean when they say certain things now.
I think it's impressive because there is it's impressive there is the fact that there is a language barrier, because at the end it's the same language, but it's not the same language.
English, yeah, but just such a different take on it. And so, like some things that are completely the same, and other things that they've shortened it, and the way they've shortened it doesn't even sound like the word that they've shortened. So it's quite confusing. You're like,
It's not like you can take classes. Like when you move to Australia, you
oh,
cannot
yeah,
take
you
special
can't.
Australian classes because
Yeah,
they don't exist. They don't exist yet.
no. And they're the same with like if I say certain things, you can see that they don't understand what I mean. Like especially like in the UK, we're very used to like if we greet someone, we just say like, "Oh, you're right," like, and then someone will be like, "Yeah, you're right." But if you say that to if you say you're right to an Australian, they're like, "Why wouldn't I be?" Like they did that, and then you're like, "No, I'm just saying like hello."
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to like I don't now I'm just like hello. Don't want to
Okay,
confuse it.
now I understand why everybody's looking funny at me when I'm UK and I'm just saying hello, because that's not
Yeah,
actually the way of saying hello. But
yeah,
thank
but
for the
all
tip
right.
now. um, Besides the process, so I would say in the process of finding the house, it's something that went quite easy, because
Yeah,
you find it from the distance. So I think, let's say, you were lucky. I don't want to say
yeah,
necessarily
definitely.
lucky because of the distance, but so on, but you were lucky. But how did the other process of settling down there, like getting a place in the kindergarten for the kids, like getting a bank account open, like doing the legal stuff, how did that work for you?
Yeah, so some things so like when we first came here, we did the bank accounts, which were really easy. You just have to have you've got to, make sure that you've got an address. Um, which is quite easy because even if you were staying in like temporary accommodation, if you can put that down and then just change it. So opening a bank account is pretty easy. And you can just use, your passport as a form of ID, and even like your UK driving license. That was
Oh,
super
okay.
easy. Driving license,
That's really an
yeah,
advantage.
yeah. The driving licenses are really easy coming from the UK because obviously they drive on the same side of the road and things like that. So that was literally you just go into like the Department of Transport, and you say, I just want to change my license from a UK license to an Australian license. They give you some forms to fill out. They take your picture and then you just pay like the fee and they transfer it for you. That was really easy. There was no like additional theory tests or anything like that. That was really straightforward. Um, Finding obviously then when we moved to the second property, we obviously had to secure that rental ourselves. That was quite hard because, like most places, there's quite a rental crisis going, housing and rental crisis. So finding something that suits you in the area that you want it is not always easy. And the application process, definitely in comparison to the UK, was a lot tougher. There's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, and you have to provide so many references, and there's quite, you have to pay quite a lot up front. I think it's like 6 weeks rent up front and then plus an additional like renter's bond, which is normally about $2,000 to $3,000. And this is all up front. So yeah, there's quite a lot, but I wouldn't say it was hard. It was just a bit of a headache, like, oh God, now we've got to do this, now we've got to do that. That was especially if you're going to, like a real estate agent, which we did. The school process was quite tricky for us because we're on a sponsorship visa, which is a temporary visa. In certain states of Australia, if you're on a temporary visa, you still have to pay for government schooling. So if we had to come to Australia with permanent residency, which most people do, then you don't have to pay for government schooling wherever you are. You would only pay if you went to a private school. But for us, because we was on a temporary visa in New South Wales, we had to pay for government schooling, um, which is just under $2,000 per term, which is about the same that you pay for some private schools.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was quite a lot. In Queensland, though, you don't, so we're not having to pay for a school at the moment, even on the temporary visa, which is nice. Um, And what else is that? Yeah, daycare is really hard. There's trying to get a daycare space. It's like trying to find gold dust. It's really, really hard. Like there's just no daycare spaces. Um, and again, for us, because we don't have permanent residency, we're not entitled to any childcare subsidy, which is like government funded childcare help. Again, if you had permanent residency, you would get that, but we don't. So we'd have to pay full daycare costs, which is like anywhere from like 120 to $160 per day. So yeah, I know.
What they are doing with the kids?
That's why she's not in daycare. I stay at home with her because I would have to find a job to earn twice that to be able to make it worth it. So I just said no, I'm not gonna do that.
Wow, that's that. Okay, that's a different level of expensive. So I
Yeah.
keep hearing, but it's funny because almost everyone that I know, and independent on the country where they have kids, they all have this issue with the daycares
Mm.
everywhere. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's I don't know if it's a general issue. I really slowly don't understand it anymore because it's everywhere an issue. So
Yeah.
we had it in Germany. We moved to Germany for a long time, but we moved without kids. So we had a kid here actually. made no difference. So we had to register the kid in the kindergarten when my wife was 3 months pregnant.
Really?
Yeah, we had no name. We just left the field empty, and we
Yeah.
registered because everyone told us do it, because in the selection process they will consider the date in which you applied for it
Right.
as a criteria. So you have
Right.
to do it as soon as possible. So we waited the first 3 months because there's a dangerous period. But after that, we registered it directly, and he barely got a place with one.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I I think is a general
Yeah, it seems
issue
to
with
be.
daycare.
Yeah, I don't know why, because even like in the town that we live in, there's like 4 different childcare centres, and all of them have like a 2 to 3 year wait list, like all of them. And it's not a tiny town, but it's not a huge town either. And there's like 4 or 5 days, and I'm like, how, like, why? It's really strange.
I think the general issue is that it's hard to find employees because it's a hard job. We have to be
Yeah.
honest, and we have to be honest from the parents' perspective that it's a
Oh,
hard job when you have
yeah.
it 20 times the amount of kids.
I
And
know
you have to
my sure enough work. I don't think I could do it with 30 plus kids 5 days a week.
exactly. So that's the first issue. And I think second is just a government issue.
Yeah.
Like they are not managing to open enough. Funny story. I just realized now while talking about kindergarten that my kid had in Kita a teacher.
Yeah.
Is it called a teacher in Kita as well? In the daycare, I
Mm,
think it's called a teacher, a
I think
caregiver.
so, yeah.
I don't know, but he was
Right.
from Australia, actually, in
Oh,
Germany.
okay.
So, and I realized he was also kind of super relaxed. He was a young guy, absolutely no
Yeah.
stress. He came in 1 week. He had half of his face was blue, and I thought, okay, what happened? Yeah, I'm just playing rugby at a club, and I got an accident in the weekend. And
Oh my
okay,
God.
okay,
Difficult.
yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, I mean, except the part of the kids and the schooling, I would say the process was not that complicated. The process of settling down, right, to open all
Yeah.
the legal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. Other than that, yeah.
That's nice. Um, did you? How did you? mm, So you came. You settled in for the first 3 months.
Mhm.
As you said, it was hard. I don't think you had a lot of contact with the local customs, with the local people, because I think you had it pretty rough
Yeah.
to handle your own situation there.
It was. Yeah. Very tough.
And I think there was not really time for socializing. But when you manage to when you move for the first time, and when you say okay, you settle down, you
Mm.
you got to live the normal life in there. How did you adapt to the local style there? What was the big difference between UK and Australia?
I think it is. Especially here because we live like in a rural town, like a country town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's sort of the same with anywhere in Australia, but definitely compared to the UK, it's a lot more like community focused. There's a lot more like going on within your local town and bringing the people together, and you see people come together a lot more, which is quite nice. So there's a lot of events like family events and stuff like that, which never really had back in the UK unless it was maybe one week during the summer holidays and then something at Christmas. Like, but here, sort of every weekend, there's always a lot going on for families, which is nice. And I think, I don't know, I just found the people a lot more welcoming. Like, I never really used to go to playgroup in the UK because I guess a part of me didn't need to because I had so many friends and family that had children. I didn't feel like I needed to. Um, but here, your people have just been so welcoming. And I think obviously because of the weather, there's a lot more, outdoor things going on, and that sort of brings people together, and people are just a lot happier. So I think they're more open to. having a conversation with someone.
We keep coming back. We keep coming back to this topic. We keep coming back to, to
True.
this topic. um, how did you find the local food? Were there huge differences between UK and Australia?
No, I don't think so. I think I kind of was expecting, um, I think, you sort of stereotypical. I thought that, come to Australia, I'd be having barbecues every day for dinner and eating nothing but salad. And but that's not really happened. Like, we do have barbecues, but not every day. I'd say, I guess obviously because of, how separated they are from the rest of the world, 90% of the stuff that you buy here is, Australian grown, Australian made. There's not, there's the only sort of like imported stuff is, tin stuff in the supermarkets, which is quite nice. But I don't think there's a massive difference in like the food and stuff from Australia to the UK. Supermarkets are very similar. Um, Even restaurants and things are very similar. I was surprised actually how much um fast food restaurants there is in Australia. I mean, I'm sure it's nothing in comparison to like America, for example. But yeah, I was quite surprised actually because I always, think of Australia being, very healthy living and stuff, which obviously a lot of people are. But I was quite surprised. Like the town we live in, like I said, it's not a huge town, not a small town, and there's just every fast food restaurant that exists in Australia is here, like all within like 2 streets of each other. So, which is quite similar to the UK. So I'd say they're quite similar when it comes to food, UK and Australia.
Um, I think this with the fast food. I've heard an interview with Russell Crowe for not such a long ago, and he said about this Australian grown meat that there is quite a lot in there. Tends to get expensive, more expensive, more expensive, but there is there a lot, and you
Yeah,
have the options. Let's say it like this. I think fast food is something that we cannot avoid, Charlotte, because I think the problem is that everyone is on this fast pace on working
it's
and
convenient. Yeah.
exactly at the end it's just convenience, and everyone knows. At least I hope that I'm not making I'm not shocking anyone now by saying that it's completely destroying your body, but
Oh
still
yeah.
you have to eat, and most probably like that's the easy way,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it is. But like I said, with the Australian grown, there is a lot of selection in the meat, in like especially meat and things like that. And very, I'd say one difference is in the UK, you often used to be able to buy fruits and vegetables all year round, like any fruit, because a lot of it was imported. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
because of Australia, it's Australian grown, you get different seasons, you get different fruits and vegetables, and you have to wait until they're in season. Like now it's like tropical fruits like mangoes and stuff like that. Whereas then, in 6 months' time, you won't be able to buy that. If you do pay ridiculous money.
That is amazing, I have to say,
Yeah.
because I think the fact that we have everything available all the time, you end up not appreciating it anymore
Oh,
because
definitely. Yeah.
it's there, you buy it all the time. Like I do remember tomatoes. Tomatoes when I was in my childhood was something special that was happening in 3 months in the summer, and that's it.
Yeah.
And now it's happening all year long. I, I,
Didn't know it's
I
just a tomato. Yeah.
it's there. Like it's there. I don't care.
Yeah, take it or leave it.
But please tell me how does the Australian mango taste in comparison with the European one?
With the what, sorry?
Well, in comparison with the one that we import in Europe, because we don't have European mango.
Oh, yeah, they're good. They are very good. Yeah, they are. They are really good. Like there's quite a few. I like it when you drive to Australia, you see all the different like farms. Like near us, there's like you drive through, they've got all like the peanut farms, like the peanut fields growing. When we first moved here, we lived right opposite a pineapple farm. And you just see it all, and it's amazing. And there's not far from here is a mango one, and it's really nice to see. You see the vans, and they're loading them all in. So that's quite nice to see. I think that gives you that connection to, you kind of do know where you're buying things from, which is nice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, how did you handle the food? Let's say food, you can find it there, so it's not such a big difference. But how did you handle the homesickness? Because I think at one moment, especially during the hard part at the beginning, you were thinking, why the hell am I doing this?
Yeah, I really struggled. Like about, I'd say, um, sort of January to December, no, about like the end of last year, I was really like, I was like this close to saying like, well, I think we're gonna have to go back to the UK. It really hit me. I think like when we first lived in the first house, the first sort of month was all right because everything just felt like so new and it was like a holiday almost. And then I started to get the homesickness, and it was all right. And then we moved, and I was okay. And then it really hit me again. Um, and I did really struggle. I just started to feel like, why did we move here? Like, I was just everything felt very negative to me. Like I was comparing everything. Um, Everything was making me sad. Seeing like my friends going out on Facebook was making me sad. And even though I know like I made the decision to come here, it's not like someone shipped me off here against my will. Like I know it was my choice, but I just started feeling like, oh, like I just and there was no, I couldn't put it down to one thing. And like Brett used to say to me, like, well, what is it about the UK that you miss? Like, why do you want to go home? And I couldn't give him an answer, and I couldn't tell him why I didn't want to be here. It was just this like sort of like overwhelming feeling of like, what have I done? I'm not happy. And I really struggled. And I think I spoke to like, I'm really lucky. My mum, my mum's amazing, and I spoke to her every day, which I do anyway. Um, but I just used to sort of like rant to her and get it all out. And I made sure like I was messaging my friends back and stuff because I was feeling down, and then sort of trying to like cover it up by just not replying to anyone, which I think was making it worse. So I kind of made the point of making sure that I was speaking to people, which did make me feel better because then I didn't feel like I was like missing out as much because I was speaking to them more regularly. Um, and and it was, Brett 100% didn't want to move back to the UK. And I did, and he was like, "Right, look, if you're that unhappy," he was like, "Why do let's wait until we've been here for a year so that we can say that we've done a year, and then when we get to that point, um, if you still feel like this, then we'll go back." And I said, "Okay." And I think that was at about 10 months then. So I was like, "Right, we've only got to do another 2 months, and then I can just go home." And then it got to that, and I think just him saying that was such a help for me because I kind of felt like I didn't feel stuck. I almost like
Mm-hmm.
not like even though deep down I knew I wasn't stuck. Like I'm a grown woman. If I'd have said I was going home, I could have gone. But um, it just gave me that like that there was another option. Like if things weren't working, and then when I got to that point, and he was like, "Do you still want to go back to the UK?" And I was like, "No, I don't." I was like, I don't think I'm 100% happy here yet, but I think if I left, I'd be upset that I left. So I was like, let's just see how it goes. And I think like that's a really good bit of advice for people struggling with homesickness because it's not always just that you always miss people, but I think homesickness, so many different things can come under that. It could be that you just miss people. It could be that you just miss familiarity, so many different things. And I think if you can just say to yourself, like if you have moved somewhere, like you've moved home to live in a different country, just trying to do it like that by like taking it, well, we'll just do another month and see how I feel. And then if you do that and you're right, well, we'll do 6 months and see how we feel. And not sort of concrete into your head that this has to be your forever. If you can, make it so, well, we'll just see how it goes. And then eventually you realize, well, I've done a year since I thought I'd see how this month went. And that was a big help for me with the homesickness, just having that sort of other option, which was good.
I think cutting it in small slices, it's always better because you have you are able to see that your options are open at the end.
Definitely.
I think this 1 year time slot, it's always really good when moving, and I think this is a good advice for everyone. We did the same when we moved. We said, okay, we go and stay 1 year. We never said
Yeah,
we come for good. We just say go and stay 1 year and see how it goes. Um, and I think it's important to have it in the back of your mind that your options are open.
definitely.
But the side effect of it, the positive side effect of it, at least for us, was that we realized that we are able to do this again, and it's going to be
Yeah,
fun as well.
yeah, absolutely. Because you do, I thought that as well, and because Brett was like, look, he really didn't want to go back to the UK because he loves it here, and he was like, look, if it really is Australia that you don't like, because I think when you're feeling homesick, I was blaming it on like silly things like, oh, I don't like the shops here, oh, I don't like this here, like I don't like the accent here, it's annoying me, like everything was, I was just finding a way, like, and
Absolutely.
I didn't dislike any of those things really. It was just in my head, I was just like, oh, I don't know what it is, so I was trying to find something to sort of justify how I was feeling, which I couldn't. So Brett said, like, maybe if we get to the year and you really don't like it, maybe we can look at going somewhere else. Like, I've always really wanted to go to Canada. He was like, then we could maybe try a year there. Like, and like you just said, we had that in our mind. Like, we know we can do it. Like, we can move here for a year. We can move somewhere else for a year. Like, it was that feeling. I think when you've lived in somewhere all your life, everything feels so concrete. And then when you get up and leave that place, you realize that you're actually a lot more free than you think you are, and you don't have to be stuck in one place. And you realize that, we can do it again. Like, it's, there's so many possibilities, and you realize that it's not, I mean, don't get me wrong, moving to the other side of the world is not easy, and there's a lot that comes with it. But you do realize that it is possible. And if you wanted to do it again, you absolutely could.
You just realize that the sky is the limit, and somehow by moving, because when you live in one place, and it doesn't matter how big or small is the place, when you live in one place, your whole world is that place, right? So you don't have anything outside that world. You go, of course, in holiday, and you go far away in holiday,
Yeah.
but holiday is not the same.
It's
I
not.
always I always like to say holiday is the demo version, right? It's
Yeah.
the version that you don't get to pay
Little
for it.
taste. Yeah.
Like you get a bit of taste, and you think, okay, this is gonna be every day of my life, and it's not. It doesn't matter where you go. It's always a lie. That's why I think holiday is a demo version. But when you move, you realize, oh, the world is not so small. My options are really open. If I
Yeah.
decide tomorrow to move to, I don't know, the US, I can move to the US, and
Yeah.
it is like this. And I think this is an important feeling that you get for yourself, that you don't get you will not stop here.
No, and it does great things for you. Like I said, I'd lived in the same place my whole life. Brett had moved around a little bit more. He'd spent like a year in Spain, and he'd sort of moved out of his family home quite young, whereas I wasn't. I was an only child. I was like glued to my mum's hip. I didn't move out until I met Brett, and I'd stayed in the same place, and everything seemed really scary to me. And then since coming here, it does it's done great things for like my confidence and my self-esteem, because I'm like, actually I can do it. Like, I've just moved from one side of the world to the other, like, and we've had no support, and we've done it. And to feel like that is yeah, it's a really nice feeling knowing that you can do these things. When you just sometimes, like you said, when you're so used to being stuck in one place, you think it's kind of impossible. You're like, oh, I could never do that, like, but you can.
It's hard until you decide. When you decide, it's
Yeah.
different. Like when you decide, you realize you can do it.
Yeah.
Charlotte, what's a local tradition or local place that you learned to you grown to appreciate and you liked more in Australia since you are there?
I just think, I don't think anywhere in particular. I'd say, if anything, just more like spending more time sort of outside in nature, really, which I've always loved. But here it is just within like 10 minutes of each other. You can be on the beach, and then 10 minutes later, you're in the mountains under a waterfall, and 10 minutes up where then you're in the complete, middle of the Australian forests and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that, like the natural scenery here, which I guess, I don't know, I didn't not appreciate it before, but here I definitely appreciate it more.
Do you think it's, even though you have to drive everywhere, because I think Australia is this the same like US, you mostly have to drive everywhere.
Yeah.
Is it's still easier accessible than it was in the UK?
I'd say so, and I think as in like compared to the UK, I'd prefer. So where we are rural, we're sort of, we're 2 hours from the coast. I get if you live on the coast, I think there's a lot of things that are a lot more, more accessible to you. But anywhere in Australia, you do have to drive. And now to us, like a 4 hour drive, now we're like, oh, that's only 4 hours. Like, whereas before, it'd have been like 4 hours. I'm not driving that. Like, um, but yeah, it is it's easy to do, and it's quite nice here because the drives that you do go on, they're so scenic. Like so if you're driving somewhere for 2 hours, it goes quite quickly because there's just so much to look at. You're not, especially where we are, you're not on just like endless grey motorways. You're always sort of, going through different country towns or over the, mountain tops and stuff like that. Like it's quite enjoyable to travel around. You can see why so many people spend years at a time just traveling around Australia because the journey of it all is just as nice as all the destinations that you get to. So it's yes, I don't we don't mind driving to places at all.
I'm due to my job, I traveled a lot in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and I was talking to the colleagues there, and I keep saying that I was driving during the weekend there and there, and in January it's quite common to drive like four or
Yeah.
5 hours. It's normal, and I do
Yeah.
remember a colleague of mine from Belfast said 4 hours. Like I don't have anywhere to drive 4 hours because I would drive off the island.
So true. It's so true. Like when we moved from our last house to here, we decided we decided to drive. We just got like a moving trailer, drove it ourselves, and then drove our car up as well. Because that was like, I think from like our last house to this house, the drive was like just over just over 14 hours. And I was like, God, that's crazy. We was like, oh yeah, like we'll just do it over the weekend. We might, might take a stop at a motel if we need to. Whereas like, and that's only from like the top of one state to the bottom of, so that's like top of New South Wales to the bottom of Queensland. Like you're still missing out like 80% of the country. Whereas in England, it only takes you 8 hours to drive from the bottom to the very top. Like you can't even leave the state for 8 hours driving over here. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, the size is huge. I like to tell this story because I think that not a lot of people knows it. I don't know if you know, but Australia, UK, and still some islands have not switched on the other side of the road driving, because all the world drove on that side. And the
Ah,
only countries who didn't switch is Australia and the UK. And the reason for it was they didn't, because the reason why everyone switched, it's such an interesting story. The reason why everyone switched is that you had the horse carriages in the past, and you had the place of the driver that was pulling the horses was in the back. And that's
ah,
why it was hard to see from the back to the front, and he had to be on the right side. That's why they drove on the left side. And when they switch and they increase the size of these horse carriages, the guy
yeah.
from the backside, he couldn't see in front anymore, and that's why he switched the place in front, and that's why they could switch on the other side of the road.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
and Australia and UK, being only an island, they didn't need the big carriages to
Ah,
transport the goods, because they didn't need this mess that the Europe need, that the US need. It's such a crazy story. Almost nobody knows. I know strange facts
I
that
didn't know.
nobody cares about.
No, that's so interesting. I didn't know that. I thought it was just a rule that was made when they made the road.
Exactly. And the thing is that I think the last country that switched in Europe was Sweden, which happened in, I think, in 1951. So it's
Oh,
not
really?
so far away. Yeah. And it was in one night where they stop all the traffic and they switch all the signs.
No, that's wild.
Yeah. That's I like to say this, to tell this story, because I think not so many people knows it.
I
I
reckon many people know that. I'm going to tell that one now. People are really clever.
No, I did. I was always curious why. I mean, it made
Yeah.
no sense for me why the whole world is driving in one place, and then when I started researching, it was I remember I found an article I think in the New York Times, and it was that this the question is why we all switched and they didn't. Oh, okay, so that's the actual question.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
um, have you picked any of the local habits or maybe sayings that you are using now when you
Uh,
talk to your friends back in the UK?
I do, like I said earlier, I do. I have started saying like no worries. I've noticed myself saying that a lot. Uh, I don't think I have. I definitely hear like when Brett comes home, sometimes he'll say like certain words, and I'm like, oh, that's very Australian because obviously he's around Australians, all day at work. So he says things sometimes. I'm like, oh, that's Australian. And my son Freddie, he's 8, and obviously he's at school. He says a lot of things like, in the UK we call it like pasta, but in Australia they pronounce it pasta. So he said pronounce it pasta. So the other day, mum pasta, and I was like, some what? And I was like, oh, I forgot they say it like that here. So he obviously, and children obviously pick up a lot, a lot quicker and things like that. And to be fair, everyone, I don't hear it, but whenever he speaks to any of our family in the UK, they always say that he sounds like really Australian. Whereas me and Brett don't hear it. I don't know if it's just because we speak to him every day, but back home, everyone thinks that Freddie sounds really Australian. Um, yeah, I'd say that maybe I the least have picked things up. I think definitely more so Brett and Freddie. Obviously, Molly's only 2 and she's with me every day, so I don't think she has. But yeah, Freddie definitely has, and Brett definitely says certain words, and I'm like, oh, that's very Australian.
And you talked about the kids, and I want to ask you, how was the move? How was the switch for them? What
Yeah.
was the hardest thing that you think they had to deal with?
Yeah. Well, for Molly, it was all right. She only like she was 1 in a few months, so she didn't really know what was going on. So she was all right. Freddie was how old? He was 6.5 when we left the UK. And we made sure that when we decided that this is what we was going to do, before we set anything in place, like we sat him down and we asked him, like, and we spoke to him about it, and he said that he would love, because him and Brett, they love going fishing and on different adventures and stuff like that. So he was really excited, and we made a point of getting him books to read and videos to watch in Australia so that he'd be excited about it, and made sure that we could answer any questions. And I mean, when it came to moving, he was very sad. Like when we said goodbye to all our family, it was really tough on him. But he was really excited. And my biggest fear was him not being able to like not settle in and being really homesick. I never imagined that it would actually be me that struggled the most and not him. Because he actually took to it so well. Like he settled into his school really well. Like he's been to 3 different schools now because we've moved, which, that's not easy on a child, especially, when you don't know anyone. And he's just done so well. Like he's taken it all in his stride. Really surprised me. I thought it would be a lot tougher on him than it has been. Don't get me wrong, there are times when there's been a few times when he's had a few tears because he misses certain people, but I think we're very lucky. He likes to play. He FaceTimes his cousins and stuff, and they play on the iPads together. And I speak to like my sister-in-laws most days, so then he'll come and speak to them. So yeah, he does all right. Like he'll sometimes he misses them and that, but I definitely didn't expect him to embrace it as well as he did and to deal with it as well as he did. I thought it was going to take a long time for him to be okay with moving. But that was me that had the bigger wobble, not my child. So that's good.
You had all the focus on him, right? You did everything for him, so that his landing it's easier. But for you, just said, yeah, okay, I will handle it. So
Yeah, definitely. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh no, why am I feeling like that?
exactly. I mean, it's always depending on where you put your focus on, and I
Yeah,
think, I think it makes sense what you say. My son is 6 now, and I think even the idea, so sometimes we talk about moving, and even the idea of moving is for him, he directly gets emotional and thinks, no, I love my house, I love my place, this is my place. And I, that's why I'm asking. I think it was hard, and I think a move
Mm.
like this you would have to prepare with some months up front. So,
Yeah, definitely. It is hard on them. And I think especially the anticipation is hard. That was I always said, and, I mean, Brett agreed that if it was too much on him, or if he did, before we left, if he'd have said like, no, like, I don't want to leave, we wouldn't have done it. We would have never, just said, well, we want to. So you've got to, because he was, although he was 6.5, he still had a life. He had, he had things that he was attached to and people he was attached to. So we'd have never forced him into it. So I definitely think, you know, talking to him and treating him like another, like an adult like us, and being open and explaining and things like that definitely helped. So yeah, I'm lucky that he was as brave as he was.
you expect from them to behave like grown-ups, but you treating them like always like kids. It doesn't help them, and I think
No.
that's absolutely the right thing to do, to sit down with him,
Yeah.
have the discussion with him. It's a hard discussion for sure, but I think that's actually the right thing to do, like to have the grown-up discussion and to say, okay, we move, so
Yeah.
it is
And
how it is.
that's what we've always done. And like, and we've always said to him, if after a while, we said to him, when we first moved, we kind of tried to explain it, like try and look at it as we're going on just a really long holiday. And, we'll work out, we'll work out from time to time how long we're going to stay, and
Hmm.
don't ever feel like, which I should have listened to my own advice, because I told him all the advice that I needed to hear. Really. I didn't listen to it myself.
True. That's focus was on him, so I think at the end was the right thing.
Exactly.
Um, how this move change your perspective of life? Like you just said, you always lived in the same community, you knew everyone around you. Like how this change, how the fact that you went outside of your comfort zone, like thousands of miles away outside of your comfort zone, uh, change your perspective on life.
I think it's been the best thing I could have possibly done. It's, like I said earlier, it's made me realize, just how accessible the world can be, and how much you can do things. Like, you tell yourself you can't do things, and you can. It's been great for my confidence, even, independence, stuff like that. And it's just, I think, like, I would recommend to anyone, like, even if they just to go for a year or even 6 months, like, just get out of the place that you're from, even if it's, it doesn't have to be forever. You don't have to move your whole life, but even if it's just for a year, because seeing somewhere else, it's just so eye-opening. And I think it's been a very, like, freeing feeling for me. Like, um, sometimes sometimes I literally just stand outside and I'd be like, I can't believe this is my life. And I'm like, I think, like, God, if you'd have asked me 6 years ago if I'd be stood here doing this, like, I would have laughed in your face. I'd have said, like, no way. And it's made me feel very grateful for life. I think coming here and having so many different experiences definitely made me feel, yeah, very grateful. And I guess optimistic, because it does excite me. Like, I think, like, oh, I wonder, we've done this. I wonder what we could do in 10 years' time. Like, where else could we go?
This realization that actually sky's the limit, and at the
Mm.
end there is no limit, and the only limit that you have is actually the limit that you
Yeah.
set for yourself. That's the biggest acknowledgement that you can have after this kind of a move, when you
Yeah.
realize, no, wait, I can do it. I mean, I can. That's okay.
Yeah. Definitely. Because I've been, especially like when I left school and stuff, a lot of people do go traveling for a year or so, and which, is very common and stuff, like some of my best friends did. And I never done that. Like, I never really at that point wanted to. And then, I looked back sort of after I had Freddie, and then I thought, God, like, I kind of wish I had have done those things. Um, so yeah, so although, we've only gone from one country to one country, but just having that different experience of a different country has sort of really like filled something in me that I guess I didn't really know that I needed to feel. Like I never really felt like I needed to go to see somewhere else. But like I said, obviously I've been on holidays like we said earlier, but it's not the same. It's a week holiday. It's not really an experience. And yeah, I think moving to Australia was something that I didn't really know I needed, but I did.
And there is one more thing, which is at least for me, it's coming from my Eastern European background, because the concept of life is like you live your life, you get married, you have kids, and then the life is over. Like
Mm.
when you have kids, I don't know if it's the same, was the same in the UK, but I do remember this concept of and I do see it now as well. Like the parents that have kids and say, "Yeah, now we're too old, we cannot do this anymore," and you
Too late.
realize it's a huge lie. But you need to do it to realize it's a lie, and you need to do it to understand how much you need it actually, like for
I,
yourself.
yeah, I completely agree because we'd have been the same. Like you said with the Eastern European, it's exactly the same with the UK. It does seem, you go to school, finish school, you get a good job, you get married, you have children, you buy the house, you raise your children grow up, and then, and then then you're just the parents whose kids have moved out. And it that's a very sort of generic line to follow, which everybody does seem to do. And I do think like, it is crazy to think now, like if I hadn't done this, like, would that have just been me? Like, would I have just followed that pattern? Because I think you just need to shift yourself out of your comfort zone, go and see somewhere else, and then you actually realize that there is so much more that you can do that you didn't think that was possible. Um, but yeah, I think it's a lot of people just don't realize that, and do just end up in that cycle.
I always like to make the comparison between the social experiences that you have, the moving experience, and also the let's say the financial experience. And I always like to say that of course there are studies that are confirming this as well, that the increase of your salary is not making you so happy as a move to a different place, because the increase of your salary is not increasing the quality of your life. Yes, you can afford to buy a newer phone. Yes, you can afford to buy a better holiday, but still
Mm.
the quality of your daily life that you live is still the same as it was before. And the fact that you move, that you took this step outside, it's such a huge benefit that nobody can understand.
It is, yeah, it is. And like you said, like buy a new phone or buy a better car. It's a very short term fix of happiness and like, oh wow, and then like I said, like I just stand sometimes. Like we've been here nearly 2 years, and I'm like almost don't believe that this is my life and this is what it's amazing, and I still feel that nearly 2 years on. Whereas, if I'd have just bought myself a more expensive item, I'd have been over it within 24 hours.
Exactly. I mean, all the phone happiness is going away after one day,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
it's always the same. Um, how is your relationship with your home country changed? Like, what is your feeling about UK now?
Um, I think it's quite mixed. I think it's always a bit like, the grass is greener. When we decided we was going to move here, I was just like, well, yeah, we'll move here because, everything in the UK is rubbish. And whereas now there are certain things, I look back and, I miss like certain atmospheres. Like I miss like a traditional, English countryside town with a country pub and an open fireplace. And I'm like, oh God, I really took that for granted because I don't have it here. But then at the same time, I don't, I definitely prefer Australia in the sense of like, I feel much more safe bringing my children up here. Like when I still keep up with, not massively, but from speaking to people and seeing things on social media, like there's so much going on in the UK now that scares me to be raising children, especially, young boy. Um, the youth crime, the gang crime, everything like that. I just think I definitely appreciate, I really do appreciate Australia. And I there's certain things that I'll always miss about the UK. But I think, you know, the things that I thought were bad about the UK still are bad, and I still see them as bad. I think it's more really sort of people and certain places that you miss, not the country itself, you know?
What do you think it would be the one thing that UK should learn from Australia?
Oh, that's a long list. I think um I think actually I'm sure Australians would disagree, but the law here is a lot tougher, and there is like, you know, you're really held accountable. You do something, you break the law, you're held accountable. Whereas I think the UK has become, you know, so soft, like, and it's awful. Like if I used to sort of walk past a police officer in the UK, I wouldn't really blink twice. But here, I really panic, even though I know I've done something wrong, because they've got guns on on their belts, and you know they don't mess about. Whereas, you know, and I know I'm not doing anything wrong, and I walk past them like, oh my god, oh my god.
There's just the feeling of being an outsider in that country, because I have the same feeling in Germany. I always thought it's my Romanian heritage, you know, but
Yeah,
no, apparently it's happening everywhere.
it's crazy, and I just think that um I think, you know, things are really handled a lot more efficiently, and as they're meant to be here. In the UK, kind of sort of never know if you're coming or going and things like that. I just think the structure of the way that they run the country in general, I think is the UK could definitely do with um learning in that way.
Okay. That sounded a bit like they could take the basics from Australia. Like,
Really, I think there's, do you know what? I think if the UK took a lot of things from Australia, they would work really well in the UK. You know, because there is a lot of similarities. So I think if they took some, you know, some good, you know, some of the good points in Australia, it would really best the UK. You know.
what is the most no, I will start the other way around. How does you're mentioning that you are talking quite often with your mom on the phone.
Mm.
How did the relationship with your family changed through the move? Did you feel you got closer?
Yeah, I do. I feel like me and my I mean, me and my mum were very close anyway. You know, we always spoke every day and we saw each other every day. But I feel like, you know, I guess sort of when you have your mum there every day, you take it, you know, you take the relationship for granted a bit. Whereas now, I think our conversations they're a lot more meaningful. We are, you know, we still speak every day, but we seem to just get on a lot better. I think, and she said that as well, that she thinks that we do seem to be a lot closer since we've been here. And I don't think, I mean, friends and stuff, I definitely don't speak to my friends as often. But I'm lucky that I have those sort of friends that I could go 2 years without speaking to them, and if I saw them, nothing would have changed. So I'm quite lucky in that sense, and I'm very close to Brett's sisters, and we speak most days. So you know, I really miss them, but you know, in a way, like you kind of really miss them, but you don't because you speak to them so much, you kind of don't feel like you're not that you're missing out. If that makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I again, like I said, with like the support when we decided to move over here, I feel very lucky that um my relationships haven't been like negatively impacted by moving here, which is really nice. And I definitely think social media helps a lot with that. It definitely when people put things on Facebook and Instagram stories, you it feels a lot more relevant and you feel a lot more involved in people's lives because you're sort of like watching it in real time, sort of thing. So that probably helps a lot as well.
I think it's a benefit, but it's also a disadvantage. I'm honest with you, because the problem is that when you meet, you have nothing to talk about anymore,
That
because
is
you
so
realize they know everything. Like, you would like to
absolutely.
tell them a story about something, but I've seen it on Instagram. What's the funniest moment that you have since you moved to Australia?
The funniest thing, I don't know. I don't know really the funniest thing. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure on a funniest thing.
The, that's okay. I mean, usually it's happening due to the lost in translation stuff. Like
Yeah,
when you have misunderstandings with the language, for you it's not such of a big change. Maybe that's why you don't have that many. Because living in Germany, I have so many. I would say lost in translations. I would just name them lost in translations. Yeah, because you are here, you think you understand what they said, but you don't,
you
because
don't. Yeah,
you are
yeah,
just
that
trying.
would be quite
You
hard.
understand you understand two words, and then the rest you try to get out of the context, and then you don't get it right, and then they said something else, and then it becomes extremely funny. So it's
Yeah, yeah,
but
I
I think
can
in your case
agree.
it's a bit different, for sure.
Yeah,
You said at the beginning about snakes and lizards.
yeah,
So have you had any encounter with the wildlife?
yeah. I have, but it's definitely not as bad as people think. I, I honestly thought that every time I'd open a cupboard door, there'd be a snake jumping out at me, or you know. I mean, for the first 2 weeks, every time I was walking in there, I was literally my eyes were glued on the ground in case I accidentally stood on one. And it's really not bad. I mean, you just kind of have to expect that, this is a country that does have like, I think they've got like the top five most venomous snakes in the world, 20, like something like 35 different species of venomous snakes. Like that, there's nothing that they haven't got here, spiders that you can kill you, but it's not as bad. I have seen them like, once I was sitting down by a river and there was one came past me. I was out on a hike, and one sort of slithered across the trail in front of me. Um, yeah, but it's not as bad. I think, especially like if you're in like rural locations, you just have to kind of understand that they are everywhere. Um, but also not at the same time, because the chances of you actually seeing them, like you probably could walk past them, but you're probably not going to encounter them, because you do come to realize that they absolutely don't want to have anything to do with you, just as much as you don't want to have anything to do with them. No. And,
Yeah.
and then you just learn, like, don't ever leave your doors open, like, because they will come in, like they will find their way in to seek warmth and stuff like that. So you don't leave your doors open. Um, And to be fair, I think the first time that I ever did see one was actually really helpful for me, because I was so paranoid about them, so scared about snakes and stuff. I used to drive myself crazy. And then when you actually do see one, and because I think when you know that they're snakes that are so venomous that it can kill you, it's petrifying. But then when you see one in front of you and it just sort of slithers in front of you, it kind of like, oh, like it's a bit of an anticlimax. Actually, wasn't that scary. I expected him to chase after me with a sword or something. It was. um, else. I've never. I think I've seen one. I think I've seen one venomous spider. Um, I think you just learn, like, don't go sticking your hands in bushes, or running through grass as tall as your knees, because then you sort of you're asking for trouble. But no, it's not. They are about, and there are times, they're anywhere. You can be at the beach, you can be in the bush, and there'll be snakes. You just learn to sort of, if you see them, just leave them, and they'll go on their way.
The At the end you are just saying don't do stupid things, like you don't take your chances, because you might encounter something.
Yeah.
Charlotte, what's one thing about Australia that you think people should know, and you have the feeling that not so many people knows about it?
Um, I think just to always be cautious, and know if you're going somewhere, like, because if you're planning a day somewhere, just really research where you're going, because you can say, for example, you could be where we are in Queensland, and you can go in the lakes or watering holes and stuff like that, and you're fine. If you're 2 hours, up from us, there's crocs. So make sure you're always, yeah,
Make sure you do the research right, all right?
yeah, you got to research, and even if you're going on a walk and stuff, like,
Mm.
you need to try and research and educate yourself on the environments that you're going to be in as much as you possibly can. Like, um because there's so much here, you need to know about, the seasons, when it's bushfire season, when it's flood season.
Mm-hmm.
I think just to really educate yourself, like I've spent so much time educating myself on the different wildlife, what to do if there is an encounter and stuff like that. And yeah, I just would advise anyone to just research it. It's, it's a beautiful country and it's an amazing country, but there's many, many, many factors that make it an extremely dangerous country too. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Why should someone consider moving to Australia based on your experience? What would be that one thing that you tell someone?
It's a beautiful lifestyle out here. It really is. Like whether you're in the countryside or you're on the coast, it is beautiful. It's a lovely way of life here. It's slow pace. I mean, people are hard working here as well, but it's relaxed. But I just think it's a country that it kind of just, there's so many different parts of it that just take your breath away.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real, I don't know, it's a very liberating place to be because there's just so much opportunity. There's so many different things, to experience. Um, I definitely think, like I said, I haven't traveled to many countries, but I'd say that Australia is like a changing country. It's incredible. I would, even if you don't move here, I think if you could visit Australia, I don't think anyone would regret even visiting.
That sounds quite interesting. Like really, really, you could do marketing for Australia. Like it was really convincing. Um, how does happiness look like um after this move?
Um, for us, it's just being able to have like that real quality time together as a family. Um, just kind of, and not even having to do anything like, spectacular, like just having those days where we go to the beach for the day or we go to the waterfalls for the day. And it's just so relaxed, like, kind of almost days that you would kind of consider to be boring now to us are really exciting. And it's really just having that quality time as a family. And I don't know. I think it almost feels like some sort of weight has been lifted off us since moving here. And um, yeah, it's just really nice. And definitely thinking of our future here and thinking of my children's future here and the things that they can experience makes me really happy. Like that's something that really does make me smile, thinking of all the different things that they could do with their lives when they're teenagers, young adults, stuff like that. That makes me happy.
That sounds amazing. That sounds really amazing for them. Um, is it is home in Australia now?
Yeah, that's such a strange one because I always like when I talk about the UK, I say, oh, back home. Um, but it was really strange because we had to fly back to the UK at the beginning of this year unexpectedly. We had to attend a funeral,
Oh,
so we had to go back quite quickly. And it was really strange because I was worried at that time because I was still sort of feeling a bit unsure about Australia. And I thought, oh my God, if I go back to the UK, like, am I going to be able to leave the UK again? Like, is it going to make me really sort of want to stay there? And I loved I wish that we'd have had longer there. But then I find myself saying to Brett, like, oh, when we get home, and Australia kind of didn't feel like home until I went home, if that makes sense.
yes.
Realised that Australia is a home now, and yeah, Australia definitely does feel like a home. I think it's quite a nice thing knowing that we'll have a home in each country. Like there's a home for us in both places.
And it's not connected with any of the physical things, right? It's connected with
No,
the people that you have around you.
yeah, definitely.
Um, you have like normally you have like you said the normal way of having life. It's like you have family, you have kids and so on. But I have somehow the feeling, looking at the people around me, a lot of them, that they didn't grow up until they got to 40 or 50 sometimes. Did you have the feeling that the childhood is over, and then that you have the feeling that you are a full grown up?
Yeah, I do now. Actually, it's really it's quite upsetting, really. But no, I do. I think definitely moving here, like I said, it's forced me to be, and with not having the family around you, I relied so heavily on, my mum's for help with things, my in-laws for help and stuff like that. And then you come here and you kind of like, oh shit, like I've actually got to face everything myself. Like it definitely has. I do. It has made me feel more grown up in some way. I'm not sure why, but it has made me feel like that since coming out here. Yeah, not in a bad way. I don't,
No, no, no.
you know.
I I also don't see it because you always have the expectation that there's a small coming in your head when you're a kid, and you think when I'm a grown up, for sure my thoughts are going to be different. No, it's actually the same, but it's still you
Yeah,
with different problems. That's the only
that,
thing that I keep
that's so
saying.
true. Yeah.
Before we wrap this up, I always try to expand my knowledge by asking for some recommendations. And I would like to have if you can recommend a movie
A movie.
for us. Yeah,
Oh, um, a movie. Any movie?
any movie.
I I think. What is my favorite movie? Oh, you got me now. I only know loads of movies, and then when someone asks you,
I
what?
know that's why I'm asking like this, because at the end, if someone is preparing, is always thinking about the
I
like
don't.
the big movies. No, it has to come spontaneously.
Um, Actually, the one that we watched a movie the other night actually, and it's called the Intern, and it was a bit of a silly movie, but it was really nice. Like we just sort of put it on just to something to watch, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. So yeah,
Okay, I haven't seen it. I will try to look at it. What's your favorite book?
my favorite book. I like. Oh, it's a book called Miracle Morning.
Okay.
Very good book. It's about changing your routine and your habits. I read it ages ago. I've definitely snuck out of those habits now, but at the time it was really helpful.
And what's your favorite band or your favorite song? I know you're listening to a lot of kids music these days, but
Yeah,
if you could decide on the music,
so
what would be
Pop Pig.
exactly except Peppa Pig, Paw Patrol, and Cocomelon?
Yeah, exactly. My favorite band of all time is Oasis.
Oh, nice one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice. What would be that one place that you think everyone should see before they die?
Australia, of course. But
Okay.
we recently went on holiday to the Whitsunday Islands in Australia, and it was incredible. Yeah, that was beautiful. But if I didn't choose Australia, I'd say one place, not that I've been, but Switzerland. That's the one place I'd love to see. Switzerland.
I had another episode with the amazing person who was living in Switzerland, and he told me
Right.
how beautiful is actually the country,
Yeah,
and
I've never. It's one
I'm
place that I'd love to be able to go.
I'm living also close by, and we also, even so, what I can tell you, even the driving experience on the motorway in Switzerland, it's on a different level. Like,
Yeah, I can imagine.
it's amazing. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Charlotte, um, I would say we can call it an episode. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time.
No, thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Thank you for the insights of your trip to Australia. Absolutely amazing conversation. I'm happy that I got to know you.
Thank you.
And thank you again.
No, thank you. It's been great. It's been lovely to talk to you.
The same for me. Have a
Thank
nice one.
you.
Bye
Bye.
bye.